Well, welcome back to Catalyst Conversations. Today, I have executive producer Devin Cruice, who is working with us and helping us put this together. And so we thought today we would break down some of the interviews that we've had, talk about some of the candidates, and maybe continue this conversation with some other things that maybe we're thinking about in the parish, what's going on in the parish and what we can do to make this parish even better. So, Devin.
Yes.
Welcome to the seat.
Yes, seen a lot of people sit in it.
Well, not a lot, but we got a few.
4, right?
Well, we were supposed to have 4.
Oh, yeah.
We were supposed to. We only got 3. We had one that no call, no show.
Yeah.
Was scheduled, but didn't show up. So it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah. I even called them too a couple days later when we talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get anything either. So
Nothing. No call, no show, nothing.
Nope. Kind of sucks. I was hoping to get everybody in. And, I felt like I, as a young person, wanted the chance to meet everybody anyway, as a voter, just to be like, okay, yeah, like I've met everyone. And of course we're talking about Louis. I've met Louis before, but I haven't been able to hear him talk about who he is. Like even Sheriff Pullman, like I kind of knew about him through my aunts were my nanny was in the force with him and my aunt was a paramedic. And so they knew him and my mom knew him. And so I've heard stuff about all these people, but I wanted the chance to kind of meet everybody. And it kind of sucks I didn't get to meet everyone.
And that is kind of a bummer because I thought one of the things that we did a pretty good job of is we stayed away from the political, here's what I want to do, and really get to the heart of who you are and the character of people. And I thought we had some good questions just to try to figure out what is that you believe. Who are you as a candidate? And so not getting a chance to talk to Louis was kind of disappointing. Obviously, I mean, there's people that would want to hear, a little bit more of who he is. He's been around for 40 years, but there's a lot of people that are new to this parish that do not know about the hat or who he is or what he's done. And I'm sure he's done some pretty great things in the parish, and I would have liked to have, put those out there for people to watch and listen to. So unfortunately, that didn't happen.
Yeah, I know like my girlfriend's family kind of know Louis and stuff, and so I've heard things about him, but I kind of have never met the guy. And I've only seen him in debates where, he talks about political things. And it'd be cool to just meet people. And that's kind of like why I was here to support this, is that it's not just like another campaign video for people where you ask them questions and they're like, this is what I want to do. They kind of, they have to kind of like talk about themselves, right, not about the problems they see or the solutions they see in the parish.
Well, coming from, you said a young person, how old are you, 24?
Oh, 21.
21. Whew.
Yeah.
Young. Okay. So young 20s. How do we get people your age to be interested in what's going on in the parish where we live, in life in general? Like, what is it that most people your age think about?
Like about the parish itself or about
just in general? Let's start in general first. Like, what is it that consumes your time, your mind, people your age?
Well, for me, it's a lot of school. But, everybody has their own goals, right? So, I'd say that some people are like already in the workforce doing something like a trade, and they're here like they're in the grind. I feel like right now, probably from about 18 to 25 is about when young people are kind of in the grind, like working their way up the ladder in some aspect. May it be grinding through school, may it be within an organization, trade, like whatever career you've chosen, trying to put your head down and work. Maybe not everybody's like that, but I would say that that's where, most people I talk to in the circles I'm in, their mind is focused, trying to like move somewhere, like up in trying to make more money, trying to make accomplishments, trying to set themselves up for success. So I would say that parish politics aren't necessarily out of the, view of people, but I would say that they kind of are in some ways. I would feel like, it just depends on the population, where you're from, who your people are, and where you live. Like, if you live in Araby versus if you live in Violet, like, how are you going to feel about the port? You know, like if you live like, I just feel like there's a bit of a difference, and
You really think that people your age thinks about those kind of things, or is it just you because you're in an industry of news?
I think that people do think about it. I think that they feel like they're a bigger fish to fry, I guess. Use a, I think that people do. I think that people know about it. I think that as far as like apathy towards things like that and the feeling of powerlessness, that's something I feel like young people have sometimes. Like it's just voter apathy with young people, but that's like a constant thing, is like trying to get young people to vote. Like retirees, traditionally decide elections. They have the most time. They're the people who are the most involved. They're people who run the voting stuff.
Right.
So, the older generations are really the ones who decide politics, which is interesting considering that we're supposed to be kind of evolving. But I mean, what can you do? It's weird from where I'm sitting, because I feel involved. I feel like I know a lot. I feel like I try to figure things out, to really think critically about things. I don't know if everybody does. I don't know if every young person does. I feel like there are times when I feel like context is everything in the parish. Like I've talked to some of my friends about parish president election, and some of the things they've said have been like, well, do you know this? Do you know this? It's like when you see everybody on their face, a lot, like if you're new to the game of parish politics and you're like trying to be a young voter, I feel like the playing field is different because you're a young voter and because you don't know as much, and it's kind of your responsibility to know more, because I feel like the small stuff that kind of dictates, I feel like for some people, whether or not they vote for somebody doesn't really get addressed as much. I would say at the WDSU debate, we kind of got some of that a little bit. But I mean, other than that, what can you do as a young person if you're busy and you just...
And I think, voter apathy, you said, I don't think applies just to the youth. I mean, obviously it applies probably in a greater number of people at your age, because how many 21-year-olds, like you said, are really interested in this? I mean, you're in the grind, you're in school, you're 21, so you go to the bars. I mean, there's a lot of things out there that are of greater incentive than thinking about politics, which when I was 21, I wasn't thinking about politics. That's the last thing on my mind. So I get it. But I was curious about like the idea of just apathy, because you said that the retirees or the older generation is the people who usually determine that. Is typically true, which is why so many people try to get out the young vote, because it's that important, because we're going to have probably 12,000 people vote in a parish where there's probably 20, 30,000 people or 20,000 people that can vote. So you have a large percentage of people that will be missing, unfortunately. As a 21-year-old, what's your thoughts of the future? Do you think it's positive?
Oops, sorry.
Negative? Worrisome?
I would say it's worrisome. I feel like we have come to, I guess, before I get too deep, on a national or a local scale, a world scale, like what do you want? Because I could talk about how I feel about a lot of it. I feel like, I guess I'll break it down in like globally. I feel like right now we're like at a point of high tension, especially now, like 4 days ago, like all of the stuff happening in the Middle East now.
Sure.
And then you have Ukraine, and then you have right now the renewables. I would say like kind of like the economic Cold War I feel like we're seeing with China, when it comes to renewables, where like America was once at the cutting edge of technology, and I feel like now, because it's cheaper, we outsource a lot of things, and so our economics are kind of, we are reliant on China, and on top of that, we are really trying hard not to be on the back end of it, but China has all the batteries, and it's like, like that is where we're going right now.
That worries you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, but I wouldn't say that every 21-year-old is worried about that, but I'm worried about it because I'm looking towards the future. Like, okay, like us as an economy, like when I am your age, like where are we going to be? Like we're going to consumer combustibles, like it's debatable on how some people feel about it. But the goal is right now is that consumer vehicles will be electric one day in order to consolidate emissions, to be able to have less entities, individual entities that are producing carbon emissions, and that it's like, okay, energy factories are doing it. We can use carbon capture in an isolated area. Like we can deal with that there. So the globally, economy and wars, nationally, I feel like we're dealing with a lot of division and just overall like radicalization on both sides. And locally, I feel like we're dealing with a lot of environmental crises and a lot of problems that we're having to deal with, things we did in the past to our environment and the things we thought we could control that we can't, because the Mississippi River is the Mississippi River and because a delta is a delta and they work a certain way. And
Right.
we decided to harness that because we needed to, but we didn't realize that we're all gonna sink away. I mean, I don't know about that dire, but like we have issues with where we're just becoming a bowl at this point, and we'll probably be fine. We're gonna keep building up, but like it's like a lot of band-aid solutions for a lot of things.
Sure.
But for me, locally, it's the environment that really gets me. Mississippi River Delta, land loss, and ecological loss in general.
So do you think that you're an anomaly at your age, or do you think people your age are like thinking like more of like, what am I going to do after college, or what am I going to do for a career, or what is it like to be a young person today thinking like what does the next 5 years hold for me?
Yeah, no, I think that most people, I'm a little bit of an anomaly. I would say that I'm not the only person who feels this way. I would say that most young people around my age that I would say attend a university and are, being exposed to this information, are worried about these things. I would say that not everybody is, and there's no problem with that. I think that it's a lot about exposure that'll get you there, and whether or not you are aware of problems or if you believe that there are problems, which, yeah, I would say my biggest... Right now, I am worried about jobs post-college and like, oh, I want health insurance. Like right now I'm on Medicaid and like I'm having to fight just to go to like dentist's office because there's just so much mess. And I want my own health insurance. I want my own full-time job. I want to be done with school. I want that really bad. And so that's my immediate life concern. But, like if we're talking about what are my worldly concerns, those are my worldly concerns. Just, a lot of concerns.
Sure. And I think that's fair. I think that I've seen a lot of statistics, and I've heard similar words from people your age of like there is a concern for what does the next 5 years look like. I mean, there's a lot of instability, and I would say polarization. You mentioned that. There's a lot of divisiveness that is now infiltrated as a nation, and we see it all the way down to the local level. I mean, if you don't agree with me, then you're wrong. You're evil. I can't talk to you anymore. And you see that, here on the local politics, man, it gets dirty sometimes. So I was really glad that the podcast that we did with these people so that it could be really more about them and their character and not a bunch of mudslinging. I thought the people that we had interviewed, I think they were great. I think they had some really good answers, and it really demonstrated and showed who they were. And I hope that we can get back to a place where we can just disagree or agree to disagree on things, as opposed to blaming and, villainizing people because they have a different opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So what did we miss, you think?
What do you mean? Like, what did we miss in the podcast?
In our questions, yeah. What could we have talked about?
I wish we would have asked more about the young people as a young person. Because especially my experience with Louis' campaign, which happened, I really wanted to ask Louis about that when he came in and talk to him about what happened. And I guess I'll just break it down. So sitting on my front porch, practicing guitar, and there were some campaigners going by. They like walked right by my house. They went house to house, walked past my house, come back, and they walked up, and I was just playing guitar, and she was like, "Hey, sorry to interrupt you, but are your parents home?" And I said, "No." my dad was home. My dad's not somebody who's going to want to talk to campaigners. And so I was like, no, they're not home. They're like, okay, we'll come back later. And they left. And at that moment, I went inside and I walked up to my dad and I said, yeah, there was some campaigners here. I told them you weren't home. Interesting thing. They didn't even ask if I'm going to vote. And he was like, what? And I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. He said, well, no, maybe, don't worry about it. I was like, but I do worry about it. Even if it's a small thing, it's like, well, it's the philosophy. It's a philosophy of you going door to door and going, looking at me, and I'm well aware I have a baby face, but I think that I look like I'm at least 18. I think so, right? Like, and so it's like, well, why didn't you ask me if I'm going to vote or who I'm going to vote for? Mm-hmm. And where does that come from? Is it, I mean, I get it. Like, the campaigners were not younger people. Sure. So it's like, okay, well, like, everybody looks like a baby when they're under like 30 to people who are older. So it's like, okay, maybe you just thought I was just a really young person. But even then, I would have still asked, because you never know.
Yeah, but you got to remember there is a stereotype that's out there. Whether it was, no matter whose campaign, it could have been Louis, it could have been anybody's that might have done the same thing. Because the stereotype is, if you're 18 to 21, more than likely you're not going to vote. Yeah. Because you're not interested, as we just talked about. You are somebody that's probably going to be a waste of time, because as you said, it's going to be the older people, the retirees that show up to the polls and vote. And so, yeah, I get your frustration because you are an anomaly. You're not that person who is just going to I don't even know what you're talking. It's voting season. No, you're well informed and you know what's going on. So I wish more people were like you and had a concern of no, I want to know who's running, because what you're going to do in the next 4 years is going to, be important in this community, especially with all the things that are happening around us right now. It's very important.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's fair. That's pretty fair. I'm not upset about it. I just thought it was it was interesting because we, it's, I guess, the difference is having the goals of the campaign in mind and the goals of, just general society in mind, I guess, in my opinion. It was okay, I feel like I've gotten from other people, are you voting? Are you going to vote? I've gotten that question where it's yeah, I'm going to vote. And I feel like a lot of people young people are talking to the right people, being pushed to vote. Right. And I appreciate that. And I want that. I would love to hear that, because I do have peers that just aren't going to vote. And I think that's crazy, and I can't understand it, but I can't make people vote. I mean, I can say hey, you should go vote, but they may say, yeah, but they're just not going to show up. So it's a pain. I also feel again, grind as a young person, it's easy to forget about, I started a new job. I'm doing college and the documentary and the small engines and this. And so it's so easy when you're just trying to get somewhere to forget about all that. I think that's fair too. It's not just apathy. It's also just damn, I'm working a lot. I do a lot of stuff, and sometimes I just want to chill when I want to chill. And it's easy when you have a 9 to 5 and yeah, you're working a lot, but your life is simpler. You don't have as much uncontrolled variety in some ways in my life. I know that I'm the reason why my life is so crazy, but I do it for a reason. And I think that a lot of other young people do it for a reason as well, is that they're trying to get somewhere. Mm-hmm. And parish politics, national politics, it all falls to the wayside when you're trying to make something out of your life. And I think that's something to think about as well. Mm-hmm. Why would I worry about that when I'm trying to make my life better? And there are people who would say, well, yeah, you can make your life better by understanding how your local representatives will make your life better. And I'm one of those people, but it's not that simple when you're super busy, Mm-hmm. But I feel like everybody's busy.
Everybody's busy. Well, and I think that's part of our problem in society. I think that because we're so busy, we don't pay attention to what's important a lot of times. And I'm not saying that politics are the end-all be-all. Clearly that's not who I am in my role, but we are so busy that we lack time to contemplate. We lack time to think deeply. We lack time to pray, and meditate. We lack time to maybe pursue the things that are genuinely important, whether it be relationships, whether it be God, whether it be helping your neighbor who's in need. Sometimes when we are so busy kindred spirits here. I wear like 7 hats like you do. Like, we're doing so many things. It's so hard to stop and just be present. And because of that, we miss so much. And so it's interesting that you say that. As a 21-year-old, that is a growing, I think, issue for a lot of people, doing so many things. And then we miss out on life of what's really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had my new job. They, one of the waitresses was like, "Yeah, I'm getting another job on Bourbon," and so she's working 2 jobs now. And I know she doesn't make bad money at the current job we're at. Outpost 45, people make good tips, but she's going after more money, and because she may need it, I'm not sure what her situation is, but it's like, oh my gosh, like, that's a lot. Like, you're gonna be working like 2 40-hour-a-week jobs, or a 32 and a 32. Regardless, it's more than 40 a week. I know it will be. And I just think that that's nuts. But I say that, but then I do the same thing. But it's not like I'm employed by 2 places. Like, it's like I'm doing other things. I guess it's goals. Like, I want to create. Some people want to get paid.
Right.
So I guess it's just different goals. But at the same time, young people, it's about the grind. I don't know what it is. It's the grind. It's just, if you want to be successful, it's what you're attracted to at my age, I feel like.
Right. So, what questions did you have?
For the
anything, podcast, or you said you came in with a couple questions on your mind, so let's go.
So, I wanted to ask, why is it that, I know it was time, but like, why did we choose the people we chose to interview? Because you got the sheriff, right? You wanted the big candidates in the parish for parish president.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get the chance to interview anybody for council or anything, which I get, because that'd be like 4 people per district. And then it would be a pain. But we didn't do, why the parish president?
Well, one was time. With so many candidates, the amount of time to interview and then to edit and to get all of that produced, is a lot of time. And for somebody that already has 7 jobs like yourself, there was no possible way. The other thing was the parish president, other than the parish president and the at-large positions, which probably would have been my second choice if we had more time. I would have interviewed all of the at-large people, because I thought those 4 candidates would have been great interviews. But those are candidates that everybody votes on. If you live in Araby, you only vote on A, Councilman A. And so I thought, if this would be a parish or a podcast for everybody to listen to up and down the parish, who's the people that they're all going to be able to vote on? So parish president, sheriff, at large, and I wanted to do at large, like I said, but just time restriction. There's just no way. And the parish president, the people that are going to be leading the government. They're the ones that make the decisions. The council does a great job of creating laws and holding accountable, but the parish president is the one that's going to be making a decision and leading the government for the next 4 years that directly affects how we live.
So with that, what is your, I know you've said it in an official format, but what is the goal here with that then, right? You said it's not to give candidates another campaign video, talk about their policy. It's to learn about them.
Right.
Why'd you do it?
Because 2 things are really important to me. People's character, their soul, and leadership. And I think that the 2 things that I wanted to address in here is like, who are you? I want to know who your character is, because that will define how you will lead. And if you're wanting and applying to be the leader of a group of people, a community of people, what's going to determine whether you're a good leader or not, first and foremost, comes from who you are, what your character is, what you believe about things, to the core of your being, like what's your creed, and the things that matter to you, because you're going to make decisions based on how you feel. And that feeling comes from your core being. Jesus says, what comes out of the mouth stems from the heart. It comes from the heart. And so in politics, unfortunately, you can say a whole bunch of stuff to sound good.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in the position, you have to make the decision. That comes from the heart. And so for me, I wanted to know like who these people really were, because if we're going to be electing them, I think everybody should be able to hear, this is who I'm voting for because this is what I think they believe. And I thought we did a pretty good job of addressing those questions and, pulling out some good answers and then pulling out some thin answers as well. I think we had some pushback on everybody, and I thought that was a good thing. And hopefully, I actually know some people made them think a little bit deeply or deeper than they typically think,
Mm-hmm.
which I think is an important thing in leadership, because leadership is crucial. And it's not something that you just have as a title. If you're applying to be a leader, but there should be some aspects of you that a thing or two about leadership, and I think that there are some candidates in the race that shouldn't be applying to be a leader because they don't understand it. They don't understand what it means to be a leader. They're great workers, they're great people, but they're not good leaders. And, I didn't want to have a podcast where we, talked about that as much as by name, but in general, I can say that there are definitely people that are running that, probably are not good leaders.
So why do you feel that way? Why do you feel like, like in your experience, right? You asked me as a young person, why do I feel a certain way about voter apathy and things? Like, why do you feel like you can see where people are not good leaders? What makes a bad leader? What makes a good leader when it comes to those things, right? Because I'm sitting here, I hear from you, especially with the podcast, it's like you are community leader based, faith based and stuff. Right. Me as a young person, I am not in my faith at all. I'm just busy, but I feel like we talk and you'd say like, I have leadership qualities and I could be one, but I don't have all the qualities I would say that you would say make a good leader. Mm. So what makes a good leader? Where do you draw the line? Is there gray? You know what I mean? Like where would you say that is?
I think there's not one quality to being a good leader. Well, I should take that back. The basic, truest definition of a leader is what? You can only be a leader if you have this one quality, and that's followers. If you don't have anybody following you, you're not a leader. You can say you're a leader. You can have the title of leader, but if people don't want to follow you, you're not really a leader. You might be what's called a de jure leader, which is a leadership by title. And have you ever worked for somebody that was your boss and you thought, how did you get this job?
Yeah. Right?
You've worked for those people. Do you want those people leading you in government? Or do you want those people leading you even at your jobs? Like you're thinking like, I don't understand a word that's coming out of your mouth right now. Like this is frustrating. And I've worked for those people. Everybody's worked for somebody. Like you're thinking, you are a terrible leader. And so the first and foremost thing to be a leader is you want people to follow you. That's what leadership is about. And there are many qualities that come with that. I mean, emotional intelligence is an extremely important aspect of leadership that so many people miss out on. The idea of empathy. Can you relate to your people? Can you manage your emotions? Do you even know what your emotions are telling you in certain situations? Do you blow up on people? Do you yell at them? Do you curse them out? Or do you find ways that you can manage your emotions and understand what's going on with your team to motivate them to greatness? So many leaders have no idea what it means to motivate people to do better. They just think that yelling at people is leadership. There's nothing that comes from that. I mean, I've seen and everybody can be a leader. It doesn't have to be just in politics or in business. You can be a teacher. You can be an administrator. You can be a parent. I mean, so many parents, unfortunately today, think that if they yell at their kids, like that's the best form of like getting them to do something. Really? I mean, you yell at your kids and then teachers yell at their kids and then, people just yell at people and they expect like, well, if I yell at them, that's actually going to be beneficial. It's probably the worst thing that we could do. Nothing motivates people when they get yelled at, yet we do it all the time. Why? Bad leadership. Good leadership understands, who are you, Devin Cruice? What do I need to know about you that you are insecure about? What are the things that I need to know about you that you're good at? And how can I use those things to motivate you to become the best that you can be? Because if I can motivate you to become the best that you can be, you're going to be a phenomenal employee, because you're going to appreciate the fact that I'm helping you to become good. And you're going to like the fact that you're becoming better at your job or doing what you're doing. And it's going to give you more self-esteem. It's going to give you more drive. It's going to make you want to do more. It's going to make you appreciate me for helping you to become better, which makes you a better employee. That's what leadership's all about, helping you to become the best that you can be. And I wonder how many people actually understand that.
How do you, as a voter, somebody's just listening, how do you tell which parish leader is parish government, whatever, I guess candidate, I was going to say official,
yeah.
But they're the candidates that are running, like, how do they tell, right? They're not everyone has worked for them. Not everyone has met them. Like myself, I hadn't met everybody or sat down and talked with people.
Sure.
How am I supposed to figure that out? Was that the podcast goal? I mean,
two things. Yes, that was the podcast goal. I wanted you to get to know who they were, see how they answered some tough questions. But the other way was, if these candidates, some of them had parties, some of them had like get-togethers. The goal was, if you had an interest in some of these candidates, go meet them. And I think I heard some of the candidates in some of the smaller races, they did not do a very good job of that. I think that if you're running for a position, you want people to vote for you, the first thing that you should do as a candidate should go meet the people. Whether it be knocking door to door, which I don't think that's the best way. But if you had ways to create small gatherings, whether it be football parties or, crawfish parties or whatever it is, have these little get-togethers where you could actually engage with the people that you're trying to get, that you want them to vote for you. Because just throwing out, how many people received so much junk mail? I know that you feel like you got to do it, but what a waste of money. Spend your money putting together some parties and get to know the people that in the area that you're running for. I think that's the greatest thing, because you want them to see who you are so they'll vote for you, not just some piece of paper that's going to tell you how great you are, because that just gets tossed in the trash. Nobody really reads those. And so I think the best thing that you could do is, if you were genuinely care about the people, go meet them.
Mm-hmm. Those little mailers make really good. My dad packages beads for when we ride on an Irish Italian.
Okay.
And so he'll take those because it's good paper, and he cuts them up and uses them to make. That's what we use them for.
Sure.
That's all we don't look at them. It's like, oh, look, the Mardi Gras paper's here.
Saves you all kind of money.
Yeah. And it's quality paper.
It is. It's thick.
They spend some money on it, and you're like, okay, yeah. Cut it up into strips, and you wrap it around the bead and staple it.
There's a need for, you have to see the face, you have to see the name. So I get it, and the signs that are all out there. I understand like getting your name recognition out there. But I think we have to, as leaders, we have to do a better job of thinking outside the box. I think we're stuck in a paradigm of this is just how we've always done it, which for me is like one of the death nails of leadership. That's the greatest form of apathy. What is what it is. This is just the way we've always done it. So what? If you want to do something that's impactful, sometimes we have to think outside of the box.
Yeah. I guess this podcast, where are we going now? Right? We're here reviewing the three people Sheriff, Carrie, Wayne. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 3 people we've interviewed. Where is this going now? Is it over now that we're done interviewing parish president candidates? Is this the last episode? What's going on?
I don't think so. I think there's 2 things that are near and dear to my heart, and you brought it up. The 2 things that I really want to talk about is leadership and the spiritual aspect of how leadership impacts everything that we do. And for me, I was asking you questions from a young person's perspective, because I think there are a lot of people your age that have a lot of questions about, like, what does the future hold? Like, what's going on around me right now? And I think there's a lot of concern, as well as maybe even some mixed in with some apathy. And I think that there is a place where people are wanting to have their questions answered, and not in a fluff way, not in a, well, this is the standard answer way, especially when it comes to the Bible or about God. I think you've asked me some questions before about God, and I don't pull punches, and I'm not afraid to say what this is kind of how it actually is. And I think that people really want to hear some genuine vulnerability, especially when it comes to those two things, leadership and God. But some people question, is there a God? What does that even mean? Is that important? Like, what happens? And people don't want to get beat over the head. They don't want to get thumped on because, well, you don't believe in this. Like, you're going to hell. Like, too many people hear that, and that's not what I'm about, and that's not what this is about. I think that somebody like yourself who has an ear to a generation, I think you could bring in some really good questions, and I think we could have some really great discussions.
Yeah. I think that'd be really cool. And I think that, like I said before, having some guests on here again
Absolutely.
would be cool. Some different guests. That'd be cool. I'd just sit right over there.
Yeah.
I'll be here. I'll text you about what questions I have for the guests. But, I feel like as a young person that social media right now is where a lot of people live, spend their free time in my generation.
Yeah.
And, hopefully something like this reaches them on social media because that's kind of the goal. But I feel like a lot of, especially right now, TikTok, everybody's on TikTok. And I have TikTok right now. I recently installed it because my girlfriend likes to send me videos, and I like to look at them because she'll send me things like, take your girlfriend and do this, do that. And I'm like, what? I'm trying to get an ear for what
Subtle
she wants.
hints.
So for what she wants. And so I'm on a wait list for this Build-A-Bear thing now. It's like a Halloween pumpkin bear.
Oh, wow.
And it's sold out already.
Wow.
Well, it was sold out like a month ago, and I'm on the email list. So it's stuff like that. That's why I have it. But
Sure.
a lot of people have it because they just flick and watch videos, and I feel like, especially my generation, attention span for videos, for content in general, is getting shorter and shorter. In news, when I was interning at Fox 8, it was 2 minutes and 30 seconds for a package, which is long in industry standards. And you got 1 minute and 30 is the standard. But I feel like my generation, it's all going to go down to I want my news in 30 seconds or less. As far as if it's on one topic, 30 seconds or less. And that makes things more shallow, or it doesn't have to be shallow, but as a creator, it makes it harder not to be. And it really challenges you to meet people where they are because you have to, because people are the reason why news is news. So I feel like right now we're at a little bit of a
Crossroads.
We're at a problem with that, but there's no real way around it. It's like everything's evolving. News is going to be all digital. Broadcasts say bye-bye at some point. It's not going to exist it doesn't even exist in its present form now. It's becoming more streaming.
Right.
And now news is less about satellite. Now, we will always have that for emergency reasons, hurricanes, things like that. You need to be able to broadcast news without having to use the telephone poles. But, it's all going to be on our phones.
Right.
It's where everybody's going to get everything. So my generation is the worst about that. But, I feel like generation after me, the younger kids are even worse. When I work, I've only worked at this new restaurant 4 days. And the amount of parents I see with iPad kids is what, I'd call them. iPad kids are kind of I don't know if you're familiar with it, a general term for just iPad kids.
Yeah.
And the amount of iPad kids I see, I'm like, oh my gosh, they just playing videos with their parents or eating dinner or talking with, their significant other, their friend, and the kids and it's so
and so
sad.
This is my issue. This is why these two topics are extremely important to me, because we wonder why we are having such struggles in society with leadership. I have conversations with people in industries all over. That's one of the big concerns is we're lacking leaders. and I'm trying to trace back some of these things. And there used to be a desire to want to learn how to become a better leader. But you just said people's attention span is not beyond 30 seconds. I mean, it's a TikTok video. That's their attention span. And so if you want somebody to learn how to become a better leader, it takes time and energy and devotion to want to change and better yourself. Or I can watch this TikTok video for 30 seconds and I can dome scroll, and we are caught in this crossroads. I agree with you. And I think that I'm going to put words in your mouth. You didn't say this, but this is what you meant. You said it is what it is. And I will fight to the death against that, because that is nothing more than the form of apathy, and that is the contradiction of what God has given us. In the Bible, there's the very first sentence in the Bible is, in the beginning God created, right? You're familiar with that passage, right? And the Hebrew is Bereshit bara Elohim. And the way we've translated is Bereshit bara Elohim, bara being created, like kind of a past tense. And it's so easy for so many people to look at the Bible and say, see, that was what God created, and it's this, he did this back then. And there's this 11th century rabbi that said, hey, you mistranslated the word wrong. It's not bara, it's not created, it's bro, which is a great word for shamet, because hey bro, what's up? Like there's this idea of bro, so it's easy to remember, and it's actually not created. He said it's creating, in the beginning of God's creating. And some people think about like, okay, what's the big deal if it's created or creating? But think about that. That means that God began to create, and he's continually creating in our lives. And if you were somebody who was created in his image, you weren't created and just to do one thing, or just you're done now. It is what it is, bara. Everything should be bro. Okay, what can I do next? How can I improve next? What are the things that I can do next? There's always something that can be better and created to be doing something better. And we get stuck in this trap, this mindset of, well, it is what it is. That's just the way we've always done it. But isn't that the definition of insanity? To just do the same things over and over and expect something's going to be different.
Yeah. Well, I guess with news, it's kind of like your job isn't necessarily to change, it's to meet. And that's why I say that, is that it's like, it's not my job as a news creator to say like, okay, this is where we need to change people. It's like, no, like if you want to make money, you're going to meet them where they're at. And if I want to get paid at the end of the day, you got to meet them where they're at. And
but you also wear another hat. You're also a documentary creator.
Yeah.
And so, yes, news is one thing. You got to give them what people need to hear. And sometimes you feed them the fear to keep their eyeballs on it. But as a documentary creator, is that the right word?
I guess so, filmmaker, but I wouldn't say that I'm like doing cinematography. I kind of just been the artistic motor behind it and the fundraising motor.
And why do you create documentaries? Because you're trying to bring awareness?
Some ways, yeah, to document, to understand with all its nuances something that is, in my opinion, beautiful.
Right. And so that's the difference right there between news and documentary. You're trying to bring awareness to say, look, this is great, and draw people into something, to a story. That's exactly what Genesis is it drawing you into a greater story. It's not just giving you a soundbite or like it is what it is, this is how it's always been. The whole idea is to draw you into a greater story and bring you into the story so that you can experience something magnificent. Mm-hmm. And that's what leadership does. Leadership, the role, the essence of leadership is to draw the people that work for this person into something great, to make them feel like they're part of something great, not just to tinker around on a job. Well, I got to do this, I got to do this. Who likes to show up to work hating their job? But if you feel like what you do at your job matters, it makes it a little bit easier to get out of bed.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like news matters. I feel like there is great storytelling to be had.
Absolutely.
But I do feel like now that I know what drives a little more, at the end of the day, like, it's about ad space. It's about meeting the ticker where it needs to go. It's about ratings. It's about, like every day ratings get released and you look at them. And, at the end of the day, you want to tell great stories, but everybody has to be paid. And like, I don't know, there's just so much craziness in a newsroom that everything just becomes, like so fast paced. Like, got to get this done, got to get it done, got to get it done. Boom, boom, boom. Like, because it's what keeps everyone paid, and that's what everybody at the end of the day cares about. And I don't blame them. I mean, my biggest thing is like, I don't want to work for nothing. Like, I want to make decent money. Like, I don't want to work for nothing. And as a young person, especially going to news, I am going to work for nothing for a little while. You know, as like an MMJ, a multimedia journalist, which is like a fancy term for a reporter who has their own camera and writes their own digital stories. You know, like, I'm not going to be paid anything. And that's something I've wrestled with. But, you know, you got to start somewhere. But news is not necessarily, you don't go into news for money. But money's not my end goal. But I want to be comfortable. I don't want to struggle. Mm-hmm. And wages where they're at right now, you know, if you're making $35K a year, $38K a year, well, that's a struggle. On that. That's a struggle.
Right.
And so as a young person, I guess it's another thing, is wages right now. You know, like with inflation, like, yeah, oh, you know, the argument that like, oh, you raise minimum wage, inflation, small businesses have the rage. It just enforces inflation. But we've got to get to a point where there's some sort of middle ground where we can, where everybody's paid a livable wage. And we got to find that, because until people can make a reasonable wage at, you know, every career, you know, once upon a time, people used to have a one income household. Like, what happened? Like, why are we here? You know, I'm not saying that needs to be the case. Nobody wants to, most stay-at-home parents are not a thing anymore. We have too many nice things, and we like too many things, and we like to be more materialistic than the people who had a one-income household. So there is that. But at the end of the day, I mean, you gotta get paid. You know, I live in a society where we are capitalist society, where I have to make money to pay my bills and to live in said society. And that has to be achievable for me to be able to even worry about other things like politics, leadership, all these things. But those go hand in hand.
But they do.
They go hand in hand. So it's frustrating. But I just have to be confident that I can get through it and be somewhere someday, and just hope that, like, okay, like, I'll be able to make money someday. Because documentary film work, whew, that's even worse than journalism. That's nothing. Absolutely nothing. I'll be able to do documentary film work on the side, but that's going to be in my time, my few off days.
It's your hobby.
Oh, yeah, my hobby. So it's like, I guess we've talked about a lot of things in a circle, but I'm pretty bad about that.
That's okay. You can edit this out.
No. I feel like it's valuable. But yeah, it's like, what am I supposed to do? Like, I can care about how important, you know, like, quality news is and all this stuff, but I got to get paid. And that's why, at the end of the day, news is the way it is.
I understand.
Is that people got to get paid behind it. It's not a public service.
Right. And I think you're hitting on the head. I think that's a concern for a lot of young people, is like, I need to get paid. Like, I need to have a wage large enough that I can move out of my parents' house. You know, I need to be able to pay for my car insurance, which is astronomical right now.
Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you want to rent is through the roof. Like, how do I find a job? And I think that all of these things are interconnected. You know, I think that we are at a crossroads, and I think that the crossroads is not always what people think that it is. I think that the crossroads that we are at is we've become so fat and happy in our abundance, you know, and we, as you said, we moved from a one-person income to a dual-income family, you know, that now it's gotten even worse because of that, we're buying more stuff, so the demand on nice stuff is higher, but we've also increased the single-parent household as well. Those numbers are astronomically higher than they were 50, 60, 70 years ago. And so now you have, you know, all of this income that has gone up, all of the inflation that has gone up, but then you have an even greater number of single parents trying to raise children off of nothing. And so a lot of this comes down to, money, but I think there's an even greater root cause to that than just inflation and wages. You know, I think a lot of this comes back to, like I said at the beginning, is there's a moral component to this that is being ignored and has been forgotten, because we've forgotten what are the things that are really important. We've placed money at the top of that list. But anybody with money will tell you this doesn't bring happiness. It just brings either more responsibility, more headaches, more stuff, but it doesn't bring genuine happiness. Now, I'm not saying we want to live in squalor or poverty, but we've lost sight of some of the greater goals that should be at the heart of what we want in life. And we've replaced them with, I don't know, idols, something that doesn't bring joy.
Should we save your story about your job to another
To
episode?
another.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like that was very relevant right there. It'd be cool.
Yeah.
So you got to stay tuned. Because
Stay
you got to hear
tuned.
that. You got to hear that one. I think that's really cool, though. I don't know. I guess in my long circular talk, how long we've been sitting here, I feel like, in general, as a young person, we're not doomed, but it certainly doesn't feel great right now. And when it comes to politics, for me personally, it is important to vote and understand, because I feel like I see a lot of problems that could be resolved with leaders, but at the same time, as one voter, it's like I can try my hardest. What can I do personally? It's got to be everyone that has to realize these things, and to make people realize them is very hard. You have to be able to give them the content, the information, and they have to decide for themselves, this is what I need to do, or that this is a problem that we need to solve. And until we can all agree that there are problems, like right now we have debatability on very big topics, like broad, very big problems. Until we can agree on what's a problem, we can't really like find solutions.
Sure. Yeah. And that's where this whole process matters, because you might not see the problem that I see. We might not agree that this is a problem. I might think it's a problem. You might not think it's a problem. And so that's why this podcast is extremely important, because I want to know, like, you might not see things that I think are genuinely important. And we need to talk about these things. And so I think that hopefully we drew that out with the candidates, but hopefully you and I can continue this conversation. We can interview some other people to bring up some of these ideas, like to point out, no, this actually is a problem. We should be addressing this. You know, we spend too much time thinking about this, but this is just, you know, a shadow and mirrors, you know, it's just smoke. We're not addressing some of the real heartfelt problems. And so I look forward to, you know, maybe getting some questions from people, letting us address some of these questions, and then getting some people on here to interview as well that I think would give some great insight.
Oh, yeah. We could talk. I could talk a lot.
We can talk. Well, I think that's our time for today. So we're going to wrap this up. But this was good. I appreciate the beginning of a longer stream of conversations that hopefully bring about change, that are a catalyst to change. So thanks for joining us.
Nice.
Thanks for putting this together with me.
Of course.
Appreciate it. All right. Until next time.
See y'all later. Perfect.
All right, good.